Australian wildlife is unique and diverse, with many of our native species found nowhere else in the world. Our isolation as an island continent has acted as a barrier to foreign species encroaching on our ecosystems. However, that natural barrier has been overcome, and our native biodiversity is under threat like never before. The first European settlers brought with them livestock, crops and vermin, initiating the invasion of exotic plants and animals into the previously isolated ecosystem. Foxes, cats, mice, rabbits, cane toads and lantana are all well-known invasive species causing problems for our native wildlife. Less well known by the Australian community is this little guy. The Asian house gecko, or Hemidactylus frenatus, is a small lizard that thrives in warm, humid conditions and eats mainly small insects. They originated in the region of southern Asia and have since made it everywhere along the tropical trade routes, including Australia.
Well, Asian house geckos originate from Asia, a fairly large area in Asia, from southern India through to Indonesia. The distribution as we know it, though, may actually be larger than it originally was, because these geckos have been moving around with the aid of humans for a very long time. So naturalised populations on many oceanic islands, certainly in the Americas, Africa, and they first appeared in Australia in 1845.
And then came to Brisbane about 40 years ago, and in that time they've spread far up the coast from a real subtropical environment into the more tropical environments.
One of the primary concerns associated with the invasion of the Asian house gecko is the potential threat that it could pose to our native gecko species. This concern has been heightened due to the Asian house gecko's implication in 3 separate species extinctions in the Mascarene Islands since the early 2000s.
So the main thing with the Asian house gecko is that they're a highly aggressive species. Not meaning that they will necessarily fight with our natives, but they're not sit and wait predators like most of our native geckos are. And so what they're doing is they're outcompeting our native species for food resources, but as well as retreat sites. So something that I find very commonly, especially from my more northern populations up around Cairns and even down to Bundaberg, is a red parasitic mite.
Certainly the mites have crossed over to Australian geckos. So yes, there is a very real disease risk.
A key aspect that makes the Asian house gecko a concern is their ability to adapt to and ultimately dominate areas outside of their native habitat with shocking efficiency.
Well, it's to do with their dispersal abilities and also their breeding strategies. They can hitch a ride anywhere with freight, and they're prolific breeders, and they're capable of storing sperm, so a single female is capable of founding a new population if she gets to a new locality. There are also other things. The urban landscape suits their hunting strategies, and they tend to be aggressive towards other geckos.
Another reason that they're so successful is they have hard shell eggs. So they've come from, most of our native species have really soft shell eggs. So they can't go into non-humid environments and they have to bury their eggs. But these guys have the hard shell calcareous eggs, meaning that they can lay their eggs anywhere, and the likelihood of them surviving in any environment is extremely high. You can float them in salt water and the eggs will survive. Around, they're highly competitive, they've got really hard-shelled eggs. They're very aggressive with each other and fighting for resources and getting food. And yeah, they have the capacity of sperm storage and very big generalists. Wow.
The ultimate question here is, what can we do? Sadly, it appears that current methods of biocontrol aren't an option for the Asian house gecko.
So the population of Asian house geckos in Brisbane would have to be in the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. We're talking huge numbers of animals in a very diverse landscape, so there's no means of a chemical control, and the only other option is probably a biological control, and biological controls have gone wrong so often. Look at the cane toad as a very good example. And in terms of biological control, there's too much at stake in Australia. We have one of the most unique, diverse gecko faunas in the world, and the risks of bringing in something that's damaging to our native geckos is a major concern. I'll just show you what's at stake here. These specimens here were given to me by national parks quite recently. This is one of our native geckos. It's a leaf-tailed gecko which is found in the rainforests here in South-East Queensland. These animals are just absolutely beautiful.
It appears that all we can do for now is monitor the impact being had on the native gecko species and respond in the most appropriate manner as these issues arise.
It would have been nice to nip them in the bud initially in the ports, but you know, they're coming in all the time. We're not talking a single colonisation events. These animals are constantly coming into the country, and they're moving within Australia between ports and along roadways and things.
Within our urban areas, I think they're here to stay.